How are you?
I'm okay.
We're here on a weekend in the office. It's a little quiet.
Yeah, you kind of dragged me in here.
I did.
I'm just joking.
I've never done a podcast on a weekend where I just do nothing but this.
Is it a weird feeling for you?
A little bit. I mean, it's usually like go, and then jump in here and do this and then jump off and do something else. Today was kind of like I ran a couple errands and then I kind of moseyed my way up in here and got the batteries put in the camera and everything. And then I was like, oh, I guess I can do this relaxed today.
Yeah, you kind of eased your way into it.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing. No.
I mean, I don't think you should be hyped up too much when you do a podcast. Otherwise, that's how severe arguments happen.
Whatever. Makes for a good podcast. So we often have the debate in the office here, you and I, about gas versus electric cars.
Yeah.
And since we're into technology, I think that's kind of the viewpoint of where we come from, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Tesla obviously has made huge waves. That's kind of the basis of, or the foundation of our conversations.
Yeah.
But Ford, GM also have made big waves, and other companies too. But here in Michigan, right, we're surrounded by the big three. So those are the ones that I think we consume the most when it comes to ads and hype and all that other stuff, right? Because it provides jobs for people here.
Right.
Tesla's interesting because Tesla can't even sell here in Michigan, technically, right?
Yeah.
They can't open a dealership, so there's other ways to do that. But more so, we run into people all the time that swear against electric, right?
I mean, I haven't really run into anybody that swears against it, but
I talk to people all the time where they're like, I'll never buy an electric car. I'll never buy it. And what it is it's never about the features of an electric car. It's always about the mentality of I just like gas. I like hearing the engine roar. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I've run into that a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. They'll say that it's a boring car. You want to hear something.
Right.
It has no soul.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, they may be right in some cases, but their Toyota Camry doesn't really have much soul either.
Fair enough, right? So, honestly, the gas versus electric debate is a great debate. Mm-hmm. I think so. I mean, there's great points on either side. What I find interesting on a technology standpoint is like, I always prefer the electric on a technology standpoint versus the gas. I definitely understand the difference between the feeling and the sound and hitting the pedal and hearing the engine roar and things like that. But I find, so the technology thing has me sold. I love the tech. I love having kind of the coolest thing. I really do like the power of electric cars because it's pretty much all torque. It's just, electric motors.
Yeah.
That doesn't ever concern me. What concerns me the most is infrastructure, right? Charging, battery life, battery charging time, things along that nature. Disposal of batteries, if we want to talk about environmental.
Yeah.
Creation of batteries.
Yeah.
Versus all the other things we're doing. However, on the same token, maybe gas won't be around forever, and this is the way that we have to roll. But what's your take? Because you do a lot more research in cars than I do, and we've had this debate or this conversation a lot over the last probably year or so, and you've had some really good points. What do you take on all of that? I know it's a lot to combine into one conversation, but
I mean, I think electric cars are important right now because we're kind of like trying to develop the technology, and even though they have drawbacks like you were talking about, the battery degradation and the impracticality of range and stuff like that. I mean, all new technologies have that kind of infancy stage, right, where they're trying to make their way and all the bugs and stuff like that get worked out. But I feel like the only way you can really work all that out is to kind of create the product, mass produce it, let the masses use it, and then you start to like learn, okay, what works, what doesn't work, what they don't like, what they do like, and then kind of tinker with it. I mean, I'm sure that's how the internal combustion car or the car in general kind of, got better as it went. So, and the same thing if you look at, cell phones. Like if you compare the first iPhone with now the many forms that we have now for smartphones, right, it's a completely different world. And I think it's going to be the same with electric cars.
But how do you look at the pain points as a PR issue? And what I mean by that is you get someone who says, oh, you know, I'm going to invest and try this electric vehicle. And they buy something like, there's a car that recently got a battery recalled. I don't know if I want to mention the name, but, you know, I think it's a Chevy Bolt actually, right? Chevy Bolt had a massive recall on batteries. As a matter of fact, every single one that got sold in a certain period of time had to get recalled. And so I think the big stat was like GM's Q4, they only sold like 20 some Bolts because all the batteries got recalled.
Yeah.
Doesn't that deter people from wanting to actually try another electric car?
It may deter maybe some people but like I think most consumers kind of understand that this is a new technology. There are going to be issues at the start, and companies are still trying to figure out their battery technologies.
Right.
And
because that's the biggest piece of it, in my opinion.
Right.
Is the battery.
Yeah.
I mean, the sound of the engine or whatever is it's not that big of a deal to me personally. And I think it would always be nice to own one gas car, even if it's like an oldie manual, like something just to enjoy and have fun with.
Yeah.
I think I would probably always want to do that. But to put away the idea of having an electric car for day to day seems a bit rash.
I think right now the kind of mentality that I have is I would honestly prefer having an electric car for my daily driver.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that I've seen that they're way more efficient. I have a house, so I can charge it every day. Right. And I don't have to necessarily pay so much on gas, which is at this point in time kind of going up.
Yeah, I mean, gas right now the gas stations around here for the normal gas is like $3.20.
Yeah, $3.20,
$3.30.
sometimes $3.50 sometimes in some cases.
And then you go premium if you have a car that requires that, and you're looking at, $3.89, $3.90,
right,
$4.
Right, exactly.
It's expensive.
Yeah, so I mean, I think with most people's commutes, I think electric cars would work for the most part. And I think they would probably enjoy kind of the benefits of that. But when you go into like the kind of longer range commutes,
right,
or even just taking them on road trips, then that's when the problems with infrastructure and battery range come in.
Right.
That's when you have those kind of issues. I mean, Tesla kind of, they've kind of made up for it because they've implemented more of a infrastructure,
right,
which is really nice.
Which is interesting. Like it seems like around here they picked Meyer to be like their charging stations.
Yeah.
And not just the one by us, but a lot of Meyer now have those Tesla charging stations around here, which is quite interesting. And we had this conversation actually before because you went to California to visit some family, and over there in Meyer, they were packed.
Yeah, I mean, they're not just in Meyer. I guess they're just in any place where you can put your car down for 20, 30 minutes and go shopping or go get a coffee or something like that. But over there, they're really packed because they're more popular over there.
Sure. And doesn't that affect charge time when they're all in use?
Yeah. So if you have, I think this may have changed for the new generation superchargers for Tesla, but if you have two parallel chargers right next to each other and you have two people charging, they're going to charge off kind of the same bank, and it kind of reduces the charge speed. So people kind of like stagger themselves if there's room to.
Does one supercharger have two plugs on it?
No.
So it's two superchargers, but it
runs off like the same kind of. I forget what the term is.
The transformer.
The same. Yeah, but like if they stagger themselves, they'll be able to run off their own.
Okay.
Until someone actually like fills up the spot, then the charging speed will get reduced. Unfortunately, it's still not bad. I don't know if it's by half. I don't remember what the actual reduction is, but it does get reduced a significant amount, which is annoying. I think I could be wrong about this, but I think the new generation superchargers have kind of remedied that.
Okay.
And I think they have to because of the popularity and the increase of demand for it. Because in California, I remember my brother-in-law, he has a Tesla Model 3, and he was dropping us off to the airport, and he was running low. It was saying that we had enough, but it was getting lower and lower.
Okay.
And we were like, we're not going to make it. So we had to stop at a supercharger. So we go and we stop at the supercharger, and there was literally a line of Teslas. And we didn't notice the line, so we kind of cut, and there was a spot empty that people thought was broken. So we went and just reversed in, and then some guy came out of the line and started yelling at us because we cut in front of everybody. So, I mean, it's pretty competitive in some cases, in some areas for some superchargers.
So even though that's an infrastructure challenge as well, because they have more use cases than not that, or more cars rather than they could support.
Yeah.
And like here, you go to any one of them around our area, which is we're just outside of Detroit, right? So the motor city,
right?
Obviously, it's not the electric city,
right?
And considering our power, we're definitely not the electric city. How many times we get power outages?
All right.
But you go to the superchargers around us, and they're quite empty.
Yeah.
But it seems like as the years go on, they start to get more filled up.
Yeah, I think electric. I mean, we do have kind of a little bit of a disadvantage here in Michigan, where it's kind of harder to acquire a Tesla. Usually people around here, what they'll do is they'll go and they'll get it from Ohio.
Right.
I mean, which is not that big of a deal.
No.
Ohio's pretty close, but it's kind of a little bit of an annoyance. But, and also on top of that, people here maybe don't like electric cars as much as maybe someone in the West, more Western states. It's warmer over there. They're more into solar panels.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's talk about the weather for a second, because batteries do not do very well in super cold conditions.
Yeah, that is.
And today it's in the teens for temperature, but I think it's like 4 with the wind chill, 4 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right. Yeah.
And that reduces your range significantly also.
It does.
So do you know of any kind of technology that they're working on to keep that from not happening, really?
Well, I mean, with any electric car, they have to kind of condition. I mean, I'm not an expert, just to clarify, but this is from what I know. Usually what happens is electric cars will condition the battery to get it up to operating temperature.
Okay.
Right. And then that will then, because if it's too cold, then there causes a problem. But either way, when you're in a cold environment, the battery performance is going to get reduced.
Sure. Because even if you have a heater, let's say, to keep that battery warm, what is a heater running off
Exactly.
of? The battery, right? So even in that regard, that definitely doesn't do well. Plus, I mean, it sits in the cold all day, all night.
Right.
I got to imagine that hurts it.
Yeah, it can hurt. I mean,
and you maybe hurt the life of it too.
Yeah, it can, but I guess it's not. I don't think it's as significant as maybe people say. I mean, the range is for sure hurt. I've heard maybe like it can be like a 20% reduction in range. With most people's commutes, I mean, like for me, like before I moved to my current location, I had like a, 20-mile commute. I don't know, which wasn't that bad. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I would get that big of a downside in it being cold and me driving my Tesla. But if I was taking road trips, that would be the problem. You know, me having to stop every now and then, you know, and here in this area, we don't really have as many Tesla superchargers. Let's say if I had a Tesla.
Right.
But then it gets even worse if I don't have a Tesla.
Right. You have like a Ford or something.
If I have, a Ford or maybe another electric car, I have to rely on Electrify America.
Right.
And I've heard some really bad horror stories with Electrify America.
As in like they don't work and you're stranded?
Yeah. Or? Like for example, the car, like let's say you have a Mach-E, right? Okay. The car will tell you a recommended stop for Electrify America. Right. And the problem is, from what I've seen from videos of reviews, the car won't tell you whether or not the certain station you're stopping at is broken or needs service,
because it doesn't know.
It doesn't know.
Right. Yeah.
So then
that's probably up to the owner of, let's say it's at a gas station, which I've seen before. Mm-hmm. It's probably up to the owner of the gas station to report and fix those things, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it's up to the person that owns it or if Electrify America has to send people out to maintain it.
Sure.
I'm not sure how it works, but it's for sure kind of, and it throws you kind of for a loop when you're driving and you're like, okay, I'm going to make it. And then you get to the station that you need to make it to your destination. Otherwise you're kind of SOL.
Right.
And you go to plug in and it's not working. Or what's more, like sometimes more frustrating is if it works, but it's not charging at the right,
Yeah,
charge
the
rate.
right amperage order. It was funny. I'm laughing because I've never run out of gas in my life.
Oh, you never?
Never.
Okay.
But I have pulled in the gas station with 0 miles till
Yeah.
empty, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm laughing at that like, I just made it.
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine you pull into one of those things and it's like, oh, I'm out of service. That sucks.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then what do you have to do? You have to call a tow truck.
Yeah.
Because you can't get, it's not like gas where you go buy, a gallon, a 5-gallon container. You go fill it up, you go fill up your car and you're done. You can't do that. You are really kind of screwed in that scenario.
Yeah, you kind of are. And I mean, that's kind of the downsides that you have with going outside of Tesla. I mean, they're working on improving the infrastructure.
And Tesla was talking about allowing other models to charge on their chargers too.
Yeah, they said something about their talks about allowing other companies in 2022 to charge, but I haven't really seen anything about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know how quickly it would flip over to being allowing.
Well, plus you have conversions that you need to do with the connectors, right? The batteries need to kind of communicate with the charger.
Yeah.
Right. To know the percentages of full, to know, because you can't overcharge these things. I mean, you could potentially cause a fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's a lot of technology that's involved to make that happen on both sides, not just Tesla.
Yeah.
But also on, the Ford or the GM or whoever else,
Yeah.
And, then you have the performance car companies that are making electric cars too. The higher end car companies that are making electric cars. There's a ton of people doing it. But to me, the biggest player is obviously number one, Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
And I really think that Ford is coming in number two. What's your take on that?
As far as battery
Just overall electric car.
I mean, I think so far Ford's doing a good job. One particular, I guess, company to take a look at is Rivian.
Oh, true. Rivian,
Yeah, Rivian.
which is owned by Ford and Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, rather invested by.
But I mean, I think they're doing a really good job. They have a lot of, I think, engineers that came from Tesla.
Yeah.
If you look at their interiors, if you look at the technology and stuff like that, it looks very reminiscent of what Tesla has.
And what's interesting too is when you look at the different cars and how much they cost versus electric versus gas,
Mm-hmm.
they're not priced any more than a gas car.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I think Volkswagen's new electric car, I forget what it's called, the ID4.
Yeah. I think you're right.
It's priced very affordably.
Yeah.
And it gives you very, very comparable range compared to maybe a Model 3. And it gives you some nice technologies. I mean, it's not like a Model 3 or a Model S where you're getting all these cool, kind of cool summoning and stuff like that, extra stuff.
Right.
But it gives you what you need to be satisfied with the electric car, and it's comfortable. I've heard good reviews on it. And most consumers are probably going to be able to afford it.
Yeah, but here's the difference though, and this is I think this is kind of more of a Michigan thing than anything else. We have a lot of family that works at Ford, GM, Chrysler, maybe even Rivian because they're here, and so getting a discount on the cars is really easy.
Yeah,
right. Getting incentives is really easy.
it is.
Where when you go buy Tesla, there's no such thing as incentives.
Yeah,
However, going to buy a Ford or GM electric car now, from what I'm hearing, is the incentives are almost nothing. Other than maybe you get some money off of having like an A plan, like I work there.
Yeah.
Or the tax credit that everybody gets in the United States for a certain number of vehicles that are sold. I think it's $7,500. And then once that's over, it's over. And I think there'll probably be some kind of tax credit for installing electric stations at your business. And, those kind of incentives to kind of build the infrastructure.
Right.
Should government get involved in that regard. But I still personally rate Tesla number one, Ford number two. And the only reason why I don't know where to put Rivian yet is because although that they look sweet and there have been a couple on the road now and they are starting to they have not produced them like Tesla.
Yeah.
Right. Like Ford. And so I don't know yet where to put them because the mass reviews haven't been kind of thrown out there yet.
I've seen some good reviews on the new Rivian. I forget if it's called the RT1. I'm not sure.
There's the one, I think it's R1T maybe.
R1T. Yeah. I've heard really good things.
And R1S, by the way.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about them, but they're expensive. I think 70,000 for the first edition or 75,000. I mean, it's an expensive car, and I feel like if you want to get to the level of Tesla or Ford, you need to produce a car that's kind of similar to, kind of like how Tesla made the Model 3 as kind of an entry level, gateway into getting an electric car, and how Volkswagen has one as well now. So I think you need at least one car that's affordable, and I think they will eventually maybe do that.
They will,
to become competitive.
Just like Tesla. Tesla came out, with the more expensive car,
right?
And then kind of went backwards and said we're going to make one for the average consumer, and built something that was, I think, in the $35,000 range,
right?
Which was the Model 3, and then they made the Model X,
or
the Model Y rather, which is the SUV that was the affordable side,
right?
And really, I mean, the technology between the two are very comparable.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, you may have some differences, but you can get the same technology, the same autopilot on each of their models. I mean, I guess the biggest difference is just performance sometimes.
Looks,
exactly,
operational stuff. Like it's really just a show off thing, more or less sometimes.
Yeah, gimmicky stuff.
Yeah,
but there's a big issue that I have kind of, and it plays into how when you go and you buy a Tesla, you're buying it directly from Tesla, right? You're buying it online,
corporate,
right? And when you get your car, it's directly from them. But in the case where, let's say, you buy a Mach-E or an F-150 Lightning, you're buying it online, similar to how Tesla is doing it, but then you have to complete the process in the dealership.
Right. Yeah, you reserve it online.
Exactly.
But then you pair up with the dealer, who then you order it through.
Exactly.
And that's how they fulfill it.
Right. But then here lies the problem where, it might be related to COVID, it probably is, but they're kind of price gouging. And this is happening with all different cars now too, where you're finding that the F-150 Lightning is going to go probably from what they're saying, maybe 20, 30,000 over the the MSRP price, or the Mach-E, same thing. Right. People are like, they can't get it for sticker. You know what I'm saying?
But even Ford could because Ford has a lot of control, more than I think people think, in GM and all those, over their dealerships, right? Although, like, let's say I own a dealership, I still have to play by their rules to keep the Ford name, to keep the Ford cars, for them to sell me a car, right?
I guess, yeah.
And they could do what's called a manufacturer price lock. This is what it goes for, period. No matter who sells it. And some manufacturers, like Apple, for instance, does this. Bose does this, right? They say, this is the price that our stuff sells for. And Apple, you can buy at Best Buy. And Apple, you can buy online. You can buy it, like a Guitar Center. But Apple has a manufacturer price lock to say, this is what you're selling my product for. You cannot discount. You cannot, price gouge in a sense.
Have they done that, though?
Who?
Ford.
Oh, that's my point, though. No.
Right.
But they could.
So
even remaining in the dealership model, they could do that.
They could.
But they don't.
Right. And that's the problem.
Yeah.
That personally kind of hurts me because, I'm already kind of wanting to put most of my money towards the car that I want. But then you're kind of, I need more than that. More than what the manufacturer is, saying that it's worth. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So to me, that kind of leans me more towards, I'm going to buy an electric car from Tesla.
Which is still American made if you want to play that game.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
Very American made, actually. Really?
Yeah. Yeah, they're all made here, I'm pretty sure, right?
Yeah.
So, I have kind of wanted a Model 3 for a while. I think it's probably a good sweet spot as far as price and performance and all the, the benefits you get from getting an electric car. I think it'd be really cool.
So, and I appreciate Tesla. There are some things that the only hesitation I have with Tesla is the craftsmanship stuff.
Oh, the fit and finish?
Yeah, like it not being perfect or not, like, which, I'm not looking for perfect, but if I'm going to spend $40,000, $50,000 on a car, even to the point of like the logo in the steering wheel sometimes looks all screwed up. Like a 4-year-old did it, almost like the peel and stick, and then put a slab of like finished paint on top of it.
Yeah, that's just what comes with, you have a car company that's still young in comparison to Chevy, or let's say GM, Ford, Chrysler.
Right.
They are really, they've been in the game for so long.
They're established.
Yeah, their quality control is at such a high level.
Yeah.
But I mean, lately Tesla's been getting that under control too.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that I want to give Tesla huge credit for is their safety ratings through the roof compared to any other manufacturer. Part of it's a battery, low center of gravity, difficult for cars to flip that way, right? Their avoidance systems, which I have seen fail.
Yeah.
Right? They do. They're not perfect.
But even in other cars, though.
Absolutely. Probably even, worse. The one that some that I get a kick out of is, people are like, oh, I had it on autopilot and I crashed and I hit someone. And, they have the black box in their cars.
Yeah.
And it sends data back to Tesla, right?
Yeah.
And they'll review it and say, no, it wasn't. That was 100% driver fault. And I love that they're so on top of these claims to kind of negate any kind of doubt that are in people's minds. And every time you get a Tesla, you are just another data machine for them to collect data on the road you're driving on.
Yeah.
Right. And although some people on a privacy standpoint don't like that, it's anonymized in a sense.
What do you think about that though? Because I mean, with self-driving being such a kind of hot topic.
Yeah.
Where, people are kind of scared about it. Hey, like I don't really want to test or trust a computer, with my life when I'm driving in the road with other people around me. How do you feel about kind of Tesla kind of using us as quote unquote, it feels like guinea pigs in some cases, right?
So let me give you two pieces because I think it's almost a two-part question.
Yeah.
The first part is, how do we trust computers to do a better job than humans?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get on an airplane?
Yeah.
Do you ever worry about it?
I do. Sometimes, yeah.
Would you rather the plane takes off and lands itself or somebody?
I mean,
just in an imaginary mind. I mean, obviously we don't know all the details of how it works, and we're not pilots. But in your mind,
based on my knowledge, I would prefer that the plane usually do the job.
And why?
Because, I mean, they've kind of nailed it down to kind of be very consistent.
It's a precise calculation, right? That follows the data and makes decisions based on data,
right?
To be perfect, right? That's the job of a computer,
right?
And although it's not perfect, what happens when the computer doesn't work in an airplane?
I mean, you can have intervention from the actual pilot.
Exactly, and that leads me to my second point.
Sure.
Yes, self-driving is cool. And in all honesty, I would love it because how much I work when I drive from site to site, sometimes it's a 40-minute to an hour drive. It would be nice to have my hands free where I can make phone calls, send text messages, browse the internet, throw a laptop up and work. However, I can't. And this gets into the talks of the levels of self-driving that are out there, right? Yeah. And I think currently Tesla's at level 3.
I'm not. I don't remember exactly.
So
you can probably look.
Yeah,
up.
And there's levels, and I don't know the names of them, and I don't know what is required. However, Tesla started to release the autopilot, right?
Right.
Where it didn't require any intervention, and people were turning it on and going sitting in the back seat.
Yeah.
And that became an issue because they realized the same thing that you mentioned. What happens when the car doesn't do what it's supposed to do? And ultimately, on a legal perspective still, because we haven't crossed the line of autonomous vehicles, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
That's the driver's responsibility.
Yeah.
So the driver needs to remain alert at all times, ready to take action in case the car doesn't stop for some reason, doesn't go for some reason, attempts to swerve. And don't get me wrong, I mean, sometimes you don't have time to react to those things.
Yeah.
So on a grand scheme of things, I think, though, if every car had some kind of self-driving, forget if they even talk to each other, let's just say that they don't, I think the amount of accidents would be reduced to a very small amount or percentage. So that's like kind of half the equation. But the other half is once the cars do start to talk to each other, and Teslas already do this, then they can calculate what that car sees, what this car sees. And for instance, if I'm in the left lane and there's a car in the lane to the right of me, and I need to move over for some emergency, and the car on the right of me can move over too, wouldn't they just go in sync, right? But so the human, let me go back though, because I'm kind of going off the rails here. Human intervention is still required in this level of autonomy. And so Tesla, because people didn't want to kind of follow the rules trustingly, requires you now to like hold the steering wheel. And like there's some kind of input now from you that's required.
Right.
before it can just go full self-driving. There's ways to circumvent that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying for the most part, but I guess, so you're talking about autopilot right now, right?
I'm talking a little bit of both, because I know the full self-driving, you don't have to put your hand on the steering wheel.
Right.
But it still requires human intervention, because it doesn't have sensors to see that you're still there.
I'm not fully, I don't know fully whether or not it requires that, but I don't think you have to keep touching the steering wheel every 20 seconds for the full self-driving. I think you can just let it do its thing.
Okay.
I believe.
Sure.
Correct me if I'm wrong. But that, I think, kind of potentially may cause problems, just because when you're driving and you're physically alert and you're paying attention to everything, if something does happen, you're ready to act. But
Right.
let's say you're in a situation where something is driving for you, you kind of get lulled into this sense of, non-reaction, I feel like.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So-
you get into a state of like contentment of
Exactly.
I'm good with this and I don't need to do anything.
Right. So I feel like therein lies the potential danger when you're giving those that don't understand the limitations of it, the danger where, let's say I'm letting this thing drive for me and you kind of trust it a little bit too much and relax, and then something does happen where the computer is like, I don't know what's going on, and fails you completely. You're not exactly ready to take full action to, mitigate the issue.
Right.
And that's where I'm saying those that do the type of research and testing for the self-driving companies, like there's a couple around here that do it. You'll see them with the big cameras and everything.
Google being one of them, actually.
Yeah. Those people are trained to kind of, make sure that they're always paying attention and ready to act at, a moment's notice. I mean, I don't know if you remember that it was a video a long time ago of, it was a dash cam footage of, there was a guy, he was, in the self-driving car, letting the car do its thing. It was nighttime. The computer didn't see the person in front of them, and bam, the car collided with the person, killed the person.
I do remember the video.
Yeah, and I mean, the guy, I don't know whose fault you can say it is. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw blame at anybody.
I mean, in a law perspective, it would be the person driving, because at this point, we're not past that certain level of autonomy.
Exactly. So, I mean, the person in the driver's seat wasn't in the position to kind of take control and prevent it from happening. And if you have people that are not, insured, like these people that are doing these testings, what kind of implicate, is that Tesla's fault? Is that your fault?
Right.
And even if it is your fault, I mean, that's kind of such a horrible, kind of reality that, you're in that case.
And that leads me down the other rabbit hole of liability when it comes to self-driving. And so, like I said, at this point, everything's the driver's fault technically by the law, no matter what, because you have to be in control of your vehicle. Right. There's no law that allows you to not be in control of your vehicle while it's moving.
Right.
And so that kind of trumps or supersedes any of the ability to sit in the back seat while you're in self-driving mode.
Mm-hmm.
But, and like now, let's say I'm driving and I head-on crash with another vehicle because I slip on a patch of ice and, something bad happens, right? Someone gets hurt really bad. I get hurt really bad. At the moment, I'm not suing Ford, which is a car I drive, right?
Yeah.
I'm not suing Ford for that. That's entirely my fault or whatever. Right. Or if someone slides and hits me and they have a Ford, I'm not suing Ford.
Right.
But now everyone is trying to attempt to sue Tesla because it's a technology that's failing, that Tesla says this works.
Yeah.
Of course, they're signing the waiver, right?
Yeah.
They're hitting I agree
that
all liability is on you and you got to, you have to take control and you have to pay attention and blah, blah, blah. And as time goes on, Tesla's requiring more and more human intervention because they don't want the liability to them.
Right.
But it adds a third party in the mix. You have two drivers in an accident plus Tesla.
Yeah.
And now Tesla has to then fight to clean their name up every single time.
Right. I mean, I guess regardless of who's at fault, what do you think what do you think about the ethics behind it? Like, what do you think about, let's say, Tesla letting people kind of have access to this, technology, letting them test it for them and gather that data at the potential
Sure.
danger of the driver themselves. I mean, of course, you're taking upon that responsibility
Yeah.
when you agree to do it. But
Yeah.
what do you think about it? In that perspective.
Well, to your point, you take on the responsibility. I'm actually totally fine with it, because Tesla's tested it in an alpha and tested it in their beta, and I don't think that they'd mass release it if they really thought it was a beta. I think it's more or less a marketing thing to call it a beta. I really don't think that it has many bugs, because you can't release a beta when human life is at danger, right? I think that's more of a marketing name than anything else. The second piece of it is, the human intervention. You have to pay attention. But lastly, every time that I've seen something get disputed with Tesla, saying the car caused me to crash, Tesla has been able to defend itself successfully to say, no, you weren't in self-driving mode. You weren't in autopilot mode. You made the mistake. And here's the data to prove it.
I mean, it's entirely possible that these people are taking this as a opportunity to, hey, I got into an accident. Let me try to blame the car because it's capable of such things.
Yeah.
And, they were probably, like you said, driving it and not using autopilot pilot at all. And I mean, it might be just an excuse potentially in a lot of the cases.
I mean, and most people are good, but there are some people out there that would take that advantage, to your point, and purposely crash to make some easy money, right, off of a lawsuit. I mean, harming themselves and others, it's just crazy to me. But there are people out there that do it, right?
Yeah.
There's insurance fraud out there that exists.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a percentage, but it's a very small percentage. I think maybe some people just don't know how to turn it on and off. I mean, even to that degree, right?
Yeah.
You have people with a lot of money who buy these cars, and sometimes they're of the older generation, and the older generation doesn't always know how to operate it. That's okay. But I mean, that's why you're responsible for you and in your actions. And that's why right now, even with full self-driving, you still have to be in the driver's seat. You still have to be able to maintain control of your vehicle. I mean, if your vehicle spins out on the ice because it was in full self-driving and goes in the ditch, by the law, that's your fault. And you actually can get a ticket for that because you were unable to maintain control of your vehicle. Until they, say, hey, you can sit in the back seat, or until vehicles have no more steering wheels, that doesn't change.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But let me pose this question to you, I guess. Do you in this today's realm of technology and how cars are and the current infrastructure that we have, do you think we're better off giving cars more autonomous ability or more driver protection intervention technology? And I guess what I mean by driver intervention technology is you have to fully be driving the car, and the intervention technology is there in the background, watching every single input and watching every single kind of variable on the outside of the car, waiting for potentially you slipping up and then intervening.
Yeah.
Instead of you relying on the car to do most of the driving. Right. What scenario do you think prevents the most kind of death?
I don't think either of those are the right answer, actually, because the intervention systems are already in place.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, they're starting to become more of a standard feature and more of almost a law, is with some of the new stuff that like the National Highway Safety Administration is putting out.
Right. But like, let's say, for example, you have kind of like the current level of autopilot that we have in every car versus every car having
auto braking, auto swerving.
Yeah. Like stuff that you have to drive the car, but it will intervene if it sees something that you don't see.
The problem is when you intervene, there's so many outcomes to that could cause an accident anyway, right? So I intervene and I swerve to miss a deer. Well, I just hit a car next to me, and now I just cause a 4-car accident on the freeway, right? I intervene and I emergency brake while the car behind me is tailing me, and they don't have enough room to brake, right? Not my fault, but these are some of the outcomes of those.
Yeah.
So, but my point though is that stuff already exists, I think, to a decent degree, and I think as time goes on, they'll improve. And I also don't think that self-driving cars on autopilot mode or whatever, because they also have that same technology, but it's computer saving a computer, more or less. I think what needs to happen, truthfully, is vehicle-to-vehicle communication. Because if I brake hard in front of me, the car behind me can instantly know that this car is braking at this degree and to start braking immediately. because the problem is it's a delay feature, right?
Mm-hmm.
I brake, you see my brake lights, then you say, oh, I need to brake, but you don't know how much yet. Then you see the distance of my car coming at you quicker. And you say, oh, that car's slamming on the brakes. Now I need to slam on my brakes. Versus someone in the front inputs a full brake. The car behind us realizes that's a full brake. I input the car inputs the full brake, so on and so forth. Also, I think that causes a resolution for traffic jams and traffic congestion.
Yeah.
Because what happens is, you know, you have cars going at 70 miles an hour, and then there's an accident, and everyone rubbernecks it, and they all start slowing down to 30, and then they go back up to 70. And all they're doing is looking at the accident. There's nothing going on.
Yeah.
And if every car just went 70 immediately, traffic would flow again. And even in traffic jams, when lanes go down to kind of 2 lanes and all that, right? If everybody did that at a proper speed, which it's possible, but that's going to cause tons of accidents when a human is involved because people are hesitant. It's not calculated perfectly. Having full self-driving while the cars communicate with each other can alleviate those things. And so one day there will be like no traffic in a sense, because traffic is caused by human hesitation, more or less. Not always.
Yeah, there's delay.
But a lot of times it's the delay, it's the slow down, the speed up. And so, you know, if you take a freeway, for instance, and there's 4 lanes, and we do this experiment, it's a wave experiment, right? And I've done this in a class before with some other stuff that I do. If you're all going 70 and then one row of cars drops down to like 20 and then picks back up to 70, you cause a wave effect behind you.
It's a domino effect.
Yes.
Yeah.
That causes a much bigger traffic jam than one row at a time.
Yeah.
Because one row turns into 2, turns into 4, turns into 8, and causes this pocket of probably 10 or 12 rows of cars to then all slow down to 20 miles an hour and then just pick back up for no reason. There's nothing in the road. There's nothing to swerve.
Yeah.
Literally, they go down to 20 and back up to 70. Versus, again, they communicate with each other. Let's say a row of cars did that, and then they got back up to speed. Every other car can just get back up to speed at a gradual pace versus having these dips of 20 for no reason. Yeah. And you've been on it. We've been on the freeway before where all of a sudden we all slow down and then we all speed back up and we look around and there's nothing. Like, what am I slowing down for?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're right. But how does that work? And as far as like implementing that in the wide like grand scheme, because like in order for that to like work at any useful level, I feel like you have to have like the vast majority of cars having that capability.
And that doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
But think about it like this. And we talked about smart home stuff. I'm going to just tie this in real quick. Z-Wave.
Sure.
Z-Wave is a universal communication.
Yeah.
That anybody can understand as long as they have the code behind it and they have the handler to do that.
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very doable, especially with 5G now being a big thing too, right?
Yeah.
It's very doable to create some kind of open platform that the auto manufacturers share because that happens, right? Like, for instance, your gas nozzle is the same size. I know I get that that's very primitive, but that's universal. How USB-C,
right?
That's universal. So, and that's among many manufacturers. Charging ports on cars, I'd be willing to bet that will be universal, and the way that those batteries communicate to the chargers will be universal. And it's those kind of things that allow you to have that communication. And I think on top of that, I think we'll also have communication with the streetlights as well through the same universal communication. So that cars can time the lights.
Yeah, I agree with you in that regard. But I guess let's say, for example, in the future where this is starting to become implemented, when do you think the cutoff's going to be? Where, let's say, my old potentially at the time, I guess when this is all being implemented, my old 2020 Honda Accord that can't communicate with anything, right? Yeah. When does that kind of get told, hey, you cannot take this on the road anymore?
Oh, I don't think that'll ever happen.
You don't think that'll happen?
No, because, I mean, look at today. We have cars from like 1950 that don't have seatbelts.
Right.
And they're grandfathered into that.
I feel like there may be a big issue in that regard where like you have all these, cars that, like, let's say a handful of cars on the freeway being able to communicate with each other, but then you have all these other cars that still don't.
Right.
How does that mix? How does that work?
I think that's actually easy. So how about we put the same scenario of the braking?
Sure.
So you have 3 cars in a lane. The car in the front is a gas car from 1950. And the 2 cars behind it are electric cars.
Sure.
The car in the front brakes at a very quick rate. As a human, your delay of figuring that out is around, let's say, half a second to a second of how hard you need to brake. For a computer, we're talking milliseconds.
Yeah, I understand where you're going with this. However, the person that has the car that can communicate with the other cars, I don't think is the problem. What about the car that can't, and then the car in front of them brakes hard because it sees something that's happening?
Yeah, definitely.
And
Definitely a
then
problem.
you're like, because of how fast everything's happening at such a high level, because of how technology has advanced, how are you going to stay safe if those cars are allowed?
But that's your choice. See, again, it comes down to that's your choice of driving that car. You know?
So you don't think that those cars will become, I guess, illegal or
No.
no?
I mean,
get
you
put to the
can't.
side.
You can't. But what happens, just like everything else, is they become very few and far in between.
Yeah. That's
Right.
probably what will happen
Yeah.
over time.
But yeah, you can't. I mean, you can't just say, "Hey, you can't drive that car anymore," right? But what also the government does, right, for big gas guzzler cars is they charge a gas guzzler tax.
Yeah.
So it costs you more to own those things. So instead of saying they're illegal,
Incentivization.
it just
yeah.
it just costs more.
Yeah.
So that's
Makes sense.
I think that's the bottom line. I mean, obviously everything's going to electric. I don't think there's fighting it per se, but there are things that you can do to kind of adapt to it and everything. But ultimately, I guess my last question for you is, are you going to make me install a charger at the office?
Probably, because I'm probably going to get a Tesla when my lease ends.
Well, okay, that's fine. As long as you buy me one too.
Sure. You got to pay me more.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, me too. No, this I think this makes sense. And I mean, I guess our conversation went from gas versus electric to electric versus electric.
Yeah, I mean, we went on kind of a little bit of a tangent with the self-driving, but I feel like you have to because of it feels like electric cars and self-driving have become kind of synonymous, with each other because they've been kind of growing together
Right.
at the same time, which is, I think, really cool.
Yeah, it is. And we'll see how it plays out. Maybe we'll talk about this in 5 years and laugh at this conversation.
Probably. Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming in on a Saturday.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and go back home.
Okay, I'm going to go back to sleep.
All right, I'll see you next time.